So actually, on the note of D&D, Dungeons and Dragons, this actually comes from as a suggestion from Neuro, and I think it's such a cool idea. But Neuro was like, dude, why don't you show people how you would make a D&D character? Because everybody loves your D&D, everyone loves your DMing. Why don't you do some stuff like that? I'm like, dude, that's actually 5-head. That's actually so smart. So I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little lower energy today. I don't feel like I have my usual pep and step because of the hospital visit I had earlier today. Nothing's wrong, just a normal hospital visit that I do, but it did take me about 5 hours. So what if we did that? But if you are interested at all in hanging out and seeing how I would build a D&D character, and if you have any questions, if you're interested in D&D, if you're a veteran, if you're a noob, if you're not sure even what it is, but you feel like hanging out and having fun, then stick around, because I think this will be a pretty cool little thing that we're going to do. In the future, I could go through how I would make like dungeons, or how I would think about making encounters and things like that, or I could show you guys my notes that I take prior to the D&D stream. Actually, I could even just show you guys that right now. So here, I'll just show you guys a little bit of insight into the D&D campaign that we're doing. So this is the only notes that I have for all of the D&D campaign that I've done. So if you guys didn't know, just as a quick refresher or recap, maybe you're not sure what's going on, I do a D&D campaign with Pig and with Neuro and with Ash from Cockeyed Gaming every other Thursday or thereabouts. Sometimes we have to skip, sometimes we do 2 in a row. Like this week we did one this last Thursday, we're going to do one next Thursday. I am the DM for the campaign, and it has been running for close to 2 years now. I think we're up to close to 40 sessions. The sessions usually run for about 4 hours at a time. But I've gotten a lot of feedback and a lot of praise for my DMing style. And I've gotten questions, too, from people who don't really know how I prefer to DM my campaign, how I come up with stuff, if I'm using a module, etc., etc. So everything that I do in the campaign, everything that I create or I make up, I do it, it's all homebrew. So I'm not pulling from a module. I'm not pulling from, like Shadows over in, of Innistrad and things like that. None of those. I don't use books or anything like that. I certainly pull ideas from, even from like movies or even pop culture sometimes. I'll pull ideas and then I'll twist it to fit my campaign if I think it's really cool. Or if there's an NPC character that I have experienced in the past, I will sometimes I'll rip them off, or I'll change them a little bit, but I'll make them inspired by someone like that. But this is my notes. So I have, let's actually update it here. I have currently 47 pages of notes that I've done. And really the notes, I would say I don't take them in any specific format. So if we look, actually we can just look. At the top I made a glossary, which is like if I want to get to specific places very quickly. I don't want to ruin anything, so I won't show you guys the end of that. I also do an NPC name redemption in my chat. I have turned it off because, as you can see, I have a ton that I need to do. But this is where I would write them down and strike them through if I completed them. So you can see I have a ton that I have to do still. And as I can, or I think that, hey, I need a name. Some people do names, and then you can also redeem a higher amount of channel points if you want to do, for instance, Taurus's, he gave him like a profession, a race, and kind of a description. Sometimes I forget the things that I've given to players. And exactly what they do. I often do not use magic items from the book or from, any sort of supplement. I just make them up. I think it sounds cool. Some of them are super basic. Some of them can do, some of them are from the book, but I just name them differently or something because I don't know exactly what it's called. And that's actually kind of one thing that I think is important when DMing in on Twitch. It's very different than DMing in real life with just your friends. So DMing IRL, you can take breaks, you can take time, you can look through the book. Oh, let me look at this. Hold on, wait, let me check this out. And it's not that we can't do that on stream. It just slows everything down, and we know that we are putting on a show, right? So we want to make sure that everything looks smooth. So I oftentimes don't look up rules unless I know exactly where I need to look. And D&D Beyond is actually a fantastic resource for that. They have some really, really quick references that you can find stuff if you're just not quite sure. But if you have a solid grasp of the rules and you've DM'd before, it's not too bad. It's more so you just have to go with the flow a lot of the time. And you have to improv exactly a town name and a profession or an entire character and things like that. Yeah, these are my notes. This is the way that I take notes. Honestly, I write them more so in book format, where it's not necessarily, I write it in book format, and I'll also sometimes do like these bullet points where I'll put in bold maybe character names or events that I know are going to happen. Obviously, you can't completely, well, you could completely just go ad hoc on your DMing and just go, fuck it, I'm not going to prepare anything, and I'm just going to make everything up on the spot. But I like to at least have important things. Sometimes there are keystone events that I know are going to happen unless something drastic changes. So if they, for instance, do drastically change the way that the story is going, then I'll try to like morph what I'm doing or improv what I'm doing to reflect that. I usually try to stray away from completely letting ideas go. There's only been a few times when I've gone, okay, I just actually can't do that here. I actually can't do this event here anymore. And usually what I'll do in that situation is I'll just kind of keep it in my pocket, and maybe I'll adapt it to something later on. Your games are 10% prepped and 90% improv. Yeah. And I think that kind of is a lot of DMs, honestly, is even if you prep, let's say you prep like 15 pages of notes, you also have to, your time is valuable. You don't have infinite time. And sometimes planning out every single nitty gritty detail, actually not even sometimes, pretty much all the time, you'll never get to everything. So unless you somehow push it in their face, like, haha, look at this little tidbit of information, unless you push that into them, it's not really going to matter. So it's more so important. The way that I like to do things is I will have maybe like, so for this is the dungeon that they went into, which was a bandit cave, funny enough, which is where they're going to now. The very beginning of Arc 1, and it was a small dungeon. It only had 8 rooms, but I put a little description of basically what the room looks like, if there's anything important in there, and then if there's any event or trap or characters or NPCs or whatever it is. And then once it's over, once they reach the last room, what is it that they get? Does anything happen? And then, how do they get back? Things like that. You can tell when you have characters and locations prepped, it really adds to the world. Thank you, man. Yeah, so oftentimes, and you can't be perfect, right? Every single NPC that's in the game is not going to be this full fleshed out super character that has its backstory and lore and history. You only want to do that kind of stuff when it's like your really primary characters that are going to make reoccurring appearances. A lot of characters don't get more than a name and a few quirks. If they're not going to be combat characters, if they're not going to be, recurring characters, even if they are, they don't really need any of that information. Looks, quirks, and like, what is their purpose? Why are they there? Those are like the 3 main things that I think about whenever I make NPCs. But I've honestly, this document has evolved as I've made it. There are some themes that I kind of keep where I will describe specific rooms and things like that. But mainly I just try to write out as if it was like a story that I was reading and just have that generally in my head and then adjust it as I need to. Yeah. So the Twitch campaign itself, so this is D&D Beyond, right? And I just wanted to do that as like a teaser of like my DMing style. I'll think of more stuff later and actually probably do a specific topic on how I like to DM and what I like to do. But for now, I think I'll just leave it at that because I don't want to just ramble about it. Which if I talk about DMing, I'm just going to start rambling. But whether you use an online tool, there's so many online tools nowadays to actually create characters in D&D. Or you can just use the good old-fashioned pen and paper. So obviously, they still print the books. I have the books over there. And you can print out character sheets from their official website. There are people who make character sheets that are very different, or they compile the information in different places. I really like using online sources. D&D Beyond I pay for. So they have some really fantastic character building. And more so than that, is you'll never lose the character sheet. Which, if you've ever played D&D before and you've had to travel to somebody's house, it happens where, oh, I forgot my character sheet, or oh, I thought I left it here, and now you don't know where it is. Worst case scenario, you have to reinvent the whole character, or just try to like remember what bits and pieces. And that just is like such a feels bad, man, because yeah, it's just awful. So I like having these online resources, even if you want to write it out pen and paper style. Like using an online resource to build it can also be very helpful. So why don't we just let's just make a character. So you can see I have some test characters I made. These are actually two characters I created just to see how this system really worked. And then I do have Ribbons over here, which you can see his last name. I don't even know if I'm actually keeping the last name. It gave you the option to make one. So I said, sure, I'll give him a last name. But let's just go ahead and create a new character. What should we do, guys? What kind of character should we make? Yeah, okay, so they do quick build options, which in the player's handbook, each class has a quick build where it's like, you need to have a character right now, then like, don't worry about it. Here you go. Just take this, and this. Here are your stats. Here's your weapons. Here's everything you have. Go for it. Can we help you create a character? Absolutely. Fantastic. So, let's go ahead and build a character. We'll build a character together. So we're just going to hit standard. Character name. What should we name our character? Guys, chat, any suggestions for some character names? Asking you guys for names was a mistake. We're going to name him Boblin. We're going to name him Boblin. This is actually sources, right? To make a character, you can refer to more than just the player's handbook. The player's handbook is like the basic book that has the basic classic and the basic classes and the basic builds that you can go. If you're making a D&D character and you are maybe new to playing in a campaign, I usually recommend stick with the player's handbook. It is the most like simple and direct, but you can still make a very, very awesome and cool character. Just with the basic stuff that they have in there. Like 99% of my characters are literally just straight from the player's handbook. Now, you can do other resources. So they do magazines. There are other book supplements out, like Xanathar's Guide to Everything, Volo's something for monsters. Again, I can't even remember what all of them are, but you can see them. They're like over here in the sources area. So there's quite a lot of sources that you can pick from. Each of them will usually add like a lot of different monsters and maybe some NPCs and some different lore that you can pick. Some of these are full-fledged adventures, but most of them will have something that adds to a like a character's class, right? Like it'll give you a different rogue archetype that you can go. So for this, we're gonna stick to just normal D&D stuff. Dice rolling. Okay, this is all just like features online here that we'll do. So advancement type. This is important too. There is two types of advancements that are typically played for D&D, and it's up to your DM what they want to do. I run almost all my campaigns, I do milestone. So milestone means regardless of the number of enemies you kill, regardless of the strength of the enemies that you kill, once you reach a key point in my campaign, I will give you a level. Whereas XP, which is the traditional way that D&D is played, When you kill monsters, you get experience. If your DM wants to, when you do quests, you get experience. When you do unique or you solve a puzzle, you get experience. Both of them are totally fine, and XP definitely makes it feel more maybe individually rewarding for each encounter that you go up against, or each challenge that you best. It is a lot more work on the DM to balance the amount of experience that he's giving out to his party. Whereas I feel Milestone takes a lot of that load off of calculating XP and things like that, which isn't honestly that big of a deal. But also makes it feel more like a story and like a really sort of feature-length campaign that you're going for. So personally, I like Milestone. Doesn't really matter. And then hit point type, again, this is just online stuff. It doesn't really matter. Manual, or we can do fixed, whatever. So fixed just means that when you level up, increase hit points by the fixed value for your chosen class or manually entered a rolled value. So every time you level up, you roll your hit dice and you add your constitution modifier to that hit dice to see what your max HP increases by. So if you're at 20, you roll a d8, and let's say you roll a 5 and you have a constitution modifier of 3, now your max HP is 28. But like, you can have it that you just increase by your hit dice every time, or that you have to roll it. And that's, again, just completely up to the DM. I always go manual, because I like to do that sort of stuff. I like to make my characters roll for things. And then encumbrance and coin weight. Lots of DMs just ignore this, honestly. I even pretty much ignore, like, ammo as well, unless it's really special ammo. So I don't do coin weight for sure. And I usually don't use encumbrance either, so long as they're not being absolutely ridiculous. Like, I want to pick up 500 rocks, and I'm just gonna hold them. It's like, okay, well, you can't do that. So it's kind of more of a common sense thing. If you want to get really hardcore, you want to get nitty gritty, I'm sure that there are campaigns that do this, and they don't sound very fun to me, but hey, you can. You can. And then this is, all of this just doesn't matter. This is just purely UI stuff specifically for D&D Beyond. So let's get into the actual meat of the character creation. So we picked our name. Our name is Boblin, but that's all we have so far. Usually, you don't have to. Now this is where your character choice and what you want your character to be really starts to get fleshed out. And these first two choices that you make can impact your character immensely. Probably the most impactful decisions you're going to make in your D&D campaign are front-loaded right at the beginning. And that is going to be your race, and that is going to be your class. Okay? That obviously has the most impact on how you're going to play the game and how your character might interact with the world. It doesn't have any effect necessarily on their personality or their religion or the way they like to fight or the way that they talk, depending on how you want to roleplay your character. Each of these races do have, like, traditional names, traditional habits. Like, goblins are a bit more crafty. They sulk and they keep to the shadows and things like that. So you're probably not going to see many goblins that are, super crazy charismatic and in the front and, all of those types of things. But that doesn't mean that your goblin couldn't be that way. I like to see if characters like to break the traditional trends of what that race does or is usually like. I like to see a good reason for it, maybe in the backstory. Maybe this goblin was raised by a noble family of humans that constantly had to go to dinner parties and things like that. So he's had all this experience talking to strangers and nobles and etiquette and things like that, right? It can be something as simple as that, but I really like those small little details because it gives your DM a lot to work with, and maybe it can make your character seem a lot more real, which is at the end of the day, that's my goal as a DM, is to make your character not just seem like a player that has popped into the world, but a person, creature, whatever it is, that has existed and is born in that world, and their choices impact the world around them, and likewise the choices of others impact them as well. That's my goal. If I can make people feel that, then I've done my job. Okay, so let's pick a race. Our name is Boblin. If you don't know, that is like a stream, almost. I mean, it's not a stream mascot. It's an online trope. Boblin the Goblin. Obviously, I love playing goblins. It's just my favorite race, regardless of the type of class I'm playing. What would you guys like to do? If you want to do goblins, we can, but you can always go for just throw out some races that you guys would like Boblin to be. So we've got elf, we've got halfling, we've got genasi, we've got goblin. So that's quite a bit of different runs. Anyone else want to throw out a race for our character to be here? Going through them, I could do like quick descriptions of them. So Aarakocra are the most broken race in the game, and are typically banned from being played. Neuro, funny enough, was going to make an Aarakocra. Call was going to be this race instead of a Kenku. And I said, you cannot play that race. I'm not going to let you do that. And the reason for that, we can actually click and we can see why, is they have flight. They can fly immediately. And flying in D&D is insanely strong. So they have a fly speed of 50 feet. Typically, people just have to walk on the ground, and they can walk 30 feet a turn. This is absolutely busted and basically lets them ignore complete encounters or areas, or immediately evade danger if they want to. So if a DM lets Aarakocras into the game, they usually will do one of two things. Either one, they have to tailor every single fight to make sure that they can't just fly away. Or two, they have to take away their ability to fly or reduce it extremely to like maybe even a once a day type of thing, because that's actually just how strong flying is in D&D. Not many things can fly. And the creatures that can fly are they're very powerful. So Aarakocra, they're typically, I think, more of like a noble race. They're a bit prideful, things like that. They're like bird elves in a way, but they have the most broken racial trait in the game with flight, and they also have a natural weapon that lets them do a unarmed strike, and they get a benefit to doing that. After that, custom lineage is like making your own race. Dragonborn. So I think these are very cool characters, actually. Also, each race comes with stat benefits. So you get bonuses to your stats for just by playing that race. So that can determine, or if you really want to kind of eke out more value with your character, you can sometimes pick your class first and then find a race that maybe has nice stats to go along with the class that you're playing. For instance, a wizard, unless you really tune it differently than the way that they're being played, doesn't have really any use for strength. So while Dragonborns absolutely can be wizards, they are maybe just wasting this racial trait. But they get a lot of other stuff, and racial traits by no means are the only reason why you should, you shouldn't make these make or break, I often will look for races specifically for what I like to do, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. But they're very cool. They're a very cool. They're a very cool race. You get to pick the type of dragon ancestry that they have, and each one of them give you a completely different damage type attribute. They get to do like a dragon breath. Yeah, they get a breath weapon that does their damage type. So if you choose blue, you do lightning. If you choose brass, you do fire. And you also, you get to do basically that type of damage. You also get a resistance to that damage from your ancestry. So you can really min-max that as well if you want to. If you can be a brass dragon, you can deal a bunch of fire damage to people in a cone once per day. It's actually very strong at the beginning of the game. 2d6. And then it actually gets better as you level up, which is insane. So this is like great. This is one of the best, I'd say maybe second best good abilities in the game. And then having a resistance to a type of damage like this is just always useful. Basically, if you have a resistance to fire, that means any fire damage that you get hit by, you take half of it. You just take half. Okay, dwarf. They have two different types of dwarves. You can be a hill dwarf. You can be a mountain dwarf. They're slightly different. Typically, dwarves are they're fairly the same, but it kind of just gets into more specifics of maybe what your clan or village that you're a part of would be doing. Dwarves usually just have dark vision, which means that they can see in the dark. It's a very handy trait to have because that means you don't have to be lighting torches all the time, or maybe you can scout ahead in the darkness and it won't affect you as poorly. They do have resistance against poison, which is good. Like, again, it's not bad to have a resistance to a damage type. Poison is not often used. Or I don't see it very much. Just depends on your campaign, what your DM's throwing at you. They get extra combat proficiencies with battle axes, hand axes, light hammers, and warhammers. So that just basically lets them wield these weapons and get bonuses to attack. They're proficient with with one of these tools. So that can assist you in your campaign. That can also give you just some like RP moments where you're going to a blacksmith and they need someone to help, and you can offer your services and be able to make some money or something like that. Proficiency with armor, that's just a race trait, and then they have like this uncanny ability to see the history of like stones and stonework, which is really weird, and when used usually catches DMs off guard. But basically it tells them like where the stonework is from and like maybe even who made it, things like that. So it's kind of weird and crazy. Hill dwarves are very similar. They have basically, they actually have the exact same. Their dwarven toughness is a little bit different. They just get an extra hit point every time that they level up. And they have a little bit different racial traits, and again, they have different lore with them. Not too much different between the two, though. Elf, there's tons of different elves. It's one of those make the DM improbabilities. It is. It actually is. But there's tons of different elves. Typically, elves will have like dexterity and wisdom bonuses. So if we look at Wood Elf, that's one of like the easy ones to look at. They have +2 dexterity, dark vision once again, which is very nice. They have proficiency in perception, which means that basically if you're asked, you have something called passive perception, which the DM might not even ask you to roll anything, but he's rolling against your passive perception, so it makes you more aware of your surroundings, maybe even makes it easier for you to see things. Elves don't sleep. They just need to go into a trance for 4 hours a day to get a long rest. Typically, a character needs to sleep for 6 hours a day. So that is 8 hours a day. There you go. So you literally can cut that in half, and I believe you're still alert when you trance. Let's see. No, you don't. Okay, you're not. So you're basically sleeping, but you get to sleep half as much if you want to. Okay, they do have a wisdom score increase. They can run a little bit better, so they have 35 feet of movement. Proficiency in these weapons. Mark of the Wild. You can attempt to hide, even when you're only slightly obscured by foliage, heavy rain, falling snow. Okay, so they're extra good at hiding.
Oh, that's Twitch channel. Okay. Twitch channel.
Awesome.
Oh, man. Hey, Jerry, say that 10 times fast.
Yo, welcome, Silent. Thank you for the follow. Genasi are another weird race. I often don't see people play these, but I know some people are diehard Genasi fans. These are basically like, okay, so Dragonborns descend from dragons, have dragon heritage. Genasi have genie heritage. So they're basically jinn, but they're like humanoid jinns. And you can pick which element of Genasi you're from, so we can look at fire Genasi. I think they all get +2 Constitution, but let's look. So fire
Twitch
did.
Channel.
What did Gary get?
Twitch channel.
Yeah, they all get +2
Hey,
Con.
Jerry, say that 10 times fast.
Yeah, thank you for the follow. Appreciate it. And they're probably, okay, so it's similar in a way to the Dragonborn, where they get resistance to that damage type. So they're resistant to fire if you're a fire Genasi. And I think they get a specific cantrip and specific spells that fit their race. So they get the produce flame cantrip, which basically just lets them make a small flame. But as they level up, they can get burning hands, which is a really powerful spell that does a bunch of damage. And I guess they have a constitution modifier. So dark vision as well, intelligence score increase 2. Not too crazy out the fire Genasi or the Genasis. They're not super broken like you might think they would be. Like, wow, being a descendant of a genie, that sounds pretty strong. And it is strong, but at the same time, it's more of an RP thing because they're pretty similar to Dragonborns in that sense. Gnomes, the smaller cousins of dwarves, typically more cunning. They're like the good versions of goblins. They actually, are these the ones that get it? They have some pretty crazy abilities, though. Gnomes do. So they get +2 intelligence. I think specifically, yeah, this is a forest gnome, so they get, it's just the intelligence. Okay. They get dark vision. Typically any race that's like outdoors or lives in caves or mountains gets dark vision. Lots of races get dark vision, actually. Gnome cunning, you have advantage on all intelligence, wisdom, and charisma saving throws against magic. So you're specifically very, very, very good about resisting magical effects. So that's pretty baller, actually. Some effects in the game can make you like fall asleep or run away in terror. Things like that, you would either do intelligence or wisdom checks. You can, there's charm magics that would maybe make you roll charisma checks, things like that. But you get advantage on it. So what that means is you get to roll 2 d20s and you take the highest roll. So you don't add them, you just take whichever one rolled the highest, which can really save you in a lot of situations. They get a minor illusion cantrip, which is just like a small, nice little thing. And they can talk to small animals, which is, again, one of those abilities that like a race gets that's seldomly used, but when it is, the DM is never prepared for it. It's like, okay, I did not anticipate you talking to this tiny squirrel. But here we go. I'm gonna role play a squirrel. So yeah, that's pretty interesting and I think can be used to really great effect. What do the other gnomes get? So deep gnomes are like Underdark gnomes. They're not evil gnomes, but they're like they live underground kind of deal. They get the same gnome cunning. They have even better dark vision, where they can see up to 120 feet, which is bonkers. So that's huge. Usually it's only 60 feet. And they have advantage on dexterity stealth checks to hide in rocky terrain. So they are specifically very good at hiding in rocks and stuff. And there's the rock gnome. Dark vision, gnome cunning. Okay, and then these guys do, instead of illusion, they get tinker, which lets them create like small toys out of like scraps and metal and things like that, which can be a very cool, like, again, RP moment. So they can make a clockwork toy that's like you wind up and it walks around, which is pretty dope. A fire starter, and then a music box. That's pretty cool. And Artificer's Lore. Whenever you make an intelligence history check related to magic items, chemical objects, or technological devices, you can add twice your proficiency bonus. So you get super benefit for those. Okay. I'm not going to go through every single one of them, but that's just kind of looking at the basic setup for how the races are done. So, let's pick... I'm going to pick Goblin, because Boblin is a Goblin, and that just happens. We'll look at Goblin, and then we'll pick it, and we'll move on, and we'll pick a class. So they get +2 Dex, +1 Constitution, which is nice. These guys are not found in the player handbook, so they have a lot more information here. They tell you, like, the age. Typically what they are, they're usually going to be neutral evil, which means they only care about themselves and their race. But even in that sense, they don't even... They really just care about themselves. Size. So being small, there is, like, not only size, like, how tall you are, but, like, what is your size classification? Gnomes and dwarves and goblins and halflings are considered small. That basically just gives you some advantages or disadvantages in certain situations, like hiding and things like that. They have their speed, they have dark vision, they have something called Fury of the Small, which once per day, if you attack something that's bigger than you, so it's medium or higher, you can deal extra damage equal to your level. Which is, I really like that. I think that's pretty funny. They can disengage or hide as a bonus action. So bonus actions are extremely strong in D&D. It's almost like a free action that you get on your turn that you can do some really special abilities. So disengaging means moving out of combat without taking a free hit. So if you're engaged, in melee and you're both fighting each other, if you leave normally, if you just walk away, they get a free attack against you immediately as soon as you walk away. Because obviously that's like ridiculous. You wouldn't just walk away. So disengage means that you're specifically trying to evade being attacked. But it only moves you 5 feet away. And then obviously hide is you hide. And they tell you what you can read and speak. So you get common and goblin, which is not a whole lot. But usually you get more languages from your class. So we'll choose goblin. Great. Boblin the Goblin is turning out fantastically. So we'll go next. Now we want to choose a class. So again, I think when you're starting off in D&D, this is going to be the most important choice that you make. Now, usually if you're new to the game, or if you talk to your DM and you go, hey, I really don't know what I want to play. Like, this sounds cool, this sounds cool, this sounds cool. Sometimes they will let you re-roll a character. Like, hey, I'm playing a bard. Boy, I really hate playing a bard. I thought I would like it. I don't like it. DMs want you to have fun, and that's their primary concern, right? Is for everyone to have fun, themselves included. So the more the players are having fun, the easier it's going to be for the DM to have fun, and everyone just has a good time. If a player hates their class and their character, and they don't want to play it anymore, they're obviously either not going to want to continue playing, or they're going to really bog down the atmosphere. So I've had that happen several times where, hey, I'm playing a paladin. It's not really what I thought it was going to be. Do you mind if I switch to like a barbarian or a warrior or something? Or fighter, rather. And if it's kind of like I'm swapping a melee class to a melee class, it's usually not that disruptive to play. But if it's like, I'm playing a barbarian and now I want to play a wizard or something like, or a druid or something like that, that might disrupt play a little bit. But a lot of players are normally like, no big deal. We'll just pretend that that's how it's always been. Like, whatever. So not a huge deal. So I won't click into every single one of these, but I can do just a quick and brief description on each one of them before we pick our class. And I highly encourage you, if you're learning still and you're reading the book for the first time, look at each class and then look at what they could do later on in the game too, because you want to enjoy it as the character levels up. If you're thinking about playing a warlock, look at what they get at level 5. Look at what they get at level 6. Things like that. So that it's not just like the first things that you get, like, oh my god, these are amazing, but then you don't like anything that you get later on. So that's important. But artificers are basically like engineers. They splice magic and technology to create like constructs or even some magically infused guns or even, I think, bombs as well. So they're basically tinkerers, they're engineers. Barbarian, which is what Call is in the D&D campaign that I'm DMing. So that's Neuro's character. It is a physical fighting class that gets bonuses to their armor class when not wearing any armor. So they actually have a natural, like, built-in AC, which is very strong. And they have the potential to do quite a lot of damage with usually multi-attacks happening in one turn. Bards are extremely versatile, and if you're not sure what you want to play, picking a bard is not really going to steer you wrong. They can be healers, they can be support, they can be fighters, they can be melee damage, they can be ranged. They can pretty much do everything. They also, depending on what subsect of bard that you pick, so you pick the class overall, but then you pick archetypes where you kind of hone in more so on the type of bard you want to be or the type of barbarian. They are a class that gets the most skills in the game. So skills are things like acrobatics, jumping from tree to tree, or bluffing, persuasion, trying to convince people that you're telling the truth, or etc. There's anything that's not like an attack roll that is like, and not a spell, is usually probably some kind of skill. And so bards can get a ridiculous amount of trained skills, which just makes them very, very solid and good characters to have. Clerics, once again, that is what the character that I'm playing, or I'm basically just controlling, Ribbons is. They are some of the best healers in the game, but they can also do a lot of damaging spells, and a lot of support spells as well, or debuffs. So instead of supporting your team and giving them extra benefits to maybe their attack or their armor or their health, you can debuff the enemy to reduce their attack or their armor or their health, things like that. Druids are nature-oriented casters. They get a very unique ability called, what is it called? I can't remember exactly what it's called, but basically Wild Shape. Here it is, sorry. Wild Shape. That lets them turn into an animal. So they shapeshift into a specific kind of animal. They take on the traits of that animal, and they can really drastically change their role in a fight. Or maybe they are much better at sneaking when they turn into like a wolf or something like that. So they also have a lot of range spells. All of them are all nature based, obviously. But they can do some healing as well, some support as well. They also have a lot of utility, which is like they can lock down the battlefield, disorient enemies, entangling roots to keep them trapped where they are, things like that. Fighters are the most direct and probably easy to understand class in the game. Fighters are melee combatants. Okay, so they are proficient in the most weapon types. They get the most benefit to engaging in combat. And one thing that's big for them is they can choose weapon specializations. So let's say you go, I want to just wield a gigantic two-handed sword, and I want to do really well with that. They have a specialization for two-handed weapons that gives you benefits whenever you're wielding one. So they can really hone in on specific types of fighting. But they also are just proficient with almost everything, so they almost never have to worry about finding a weapon. What were the goblin bonuses again? +2 dexterity and +1 constitution. And we'll go over stats too. After we look at all the classes here. Monks are extremely interesting. They're unarmed fighters, and they're like spiritual fighters. So the best way that I can describe them, they use this concept called ki, which basically lets them combo or alter their unarmed strikes. So I know, for instance, monks don't use any weapons, and they basically just punch people with their fists. But they can combo their attacks to do different types of effects to the enemy. Maybe it increases their damage. Maybe it disorients their foe. Maybe it shoots their enemy backwards from the force. They can also, I know, eventually imbue their attacks with elemental damage, where their fists light on fire, or they can do acid damage, electric damage, things like that. They're very cool. Very few people play monks that I've seen. I've almost never played D&D with a monk, because they're a lot more complicated than, let's say, a fighter. You have to really think about how you engage in combat. Instead of, I'm a barbarian, I'm going to rage, I'm going to run in and attack. You have to think okay, what would be the best way to combo these three things together in order to specifically take down that opponent. Paladins are plate wearers. They serve a god, usually. So cleric and paladin are religious classes. They get their power from deities, which is something that's actually important. They get their power from deities. So when you make a cleric or a paladin, you have to choose which deity you're going to serve. And by making that choice, you basically lock in what domain you're going to be a part of. And that locks you out of some spells. That allows you to specifically get some spells. But basically, it's you're two sides of the same coin, right? There's holy and good and lawful good, and you're just the good person, and you're altruistic, or you're trying to serve your deity's needs. And there's also evil gods. So there's evil clerics, there's evil paladins. So paladin is basically a more melee focused version of the cleric. They don't play similarly, but they have similar themes, I would say. They play very differently, where paladins can summon steeds and things like that to ride around on and stuff. Clerics are more, they can mass heal people, things like that. Rangers are very interesting. They are, once again, another nature type of class. You can think of rangers almost like Aragorn from Lord of the Rings, where they are experts at tracking prey and surviving in the wilderness. They do not have to be focused on bows or on any particular weapon, but they do get a specialization, I think, at level 2 or level 3, where you do get benefits. Let's say, hey, I want my ranger to be like a bow slinging badass, and I don't want to go into melee combat. I just want to shoot people. You can get extra benefits for doing that. Vice versa for like 2-weapon fighting, where they can run around with 2 blades and attack people. So it's like a more nature focused version of the fighter with a bit more utility in that they also do get spells, and I think they can even tame creatures. If I recall correctly, I think one of their archetypes allow them to have like a companion that is like a combat companion, which is not very common in D&D. Rogue, which is usually my favorite class to play. I'm a big fan of rogues. They are the stealth class, sneaky. They are, again, your archetype really determines the type of rogue you want to be. But in general, all rogues share the ability to strike from the shadows. Typically, they have a much easier time hiding or picking locks, detecting traps, and things like that. And they have a specific benefit called sneak attack, which means if they are attacking somebody that doesn't know they're there or they have advantage against, they do a ton of extra damage, just all in one hit. And a lot of their damage kind of relies on that sneak attack. So a rogue player isn't wanting to charge into the battle, and oftentimes either wants to go first or wants to go after all of their friends have gone so that they can get advantage. Sorcerer. So Sorcerer, Warlock, Wizard. I'm actually going to talk about all 3 of these at the same time, because it's kind of interesting the way that these classes are. To maybe someone who hasn't played D&D before, you'd go, well, these things are like the same. These are literally just different words for the same thing. And in a way that they are. They all play very differently. Wizards, so we'll start with Wizard. Wizard is like in a way like Gandalf. He is your archetype of more old and has dedicated themselves to the research of magic in order to cast spells. Nigel, in our D&D campaign, is a wizard. He's a wizard class. So the main characteristic of wizards is that they have to have a spell book. They don't have any necessarily innate ability to do magic. They just understand through research how to cast magic and how it all works. They are like the scientists of magic in a way. They get the benefit and drawback that they have to prepare a list of spells every day, but they also get the ability, if they find a spell scroll, for a fee, they can write it down in their book. So where other classes, a spell scroll is a one-use item that casts that spell, if the wizard doesn't permanently know that spell, they can transcribe it into their book and learn it forever. So that's an extremely powerful tool. Sorcerers and warlocks will things into existence, and their magic is more, for the sorcerer, is more instinctual. So they get some special bloodline that can either be like from the fairies or from dragons even, and a third one that I don't remember, but it's their like heritage that allows them to cast magic, and it's like an innate force of will that allows them to bend reality. So their benefit is they do not need to prepare a list of spells. They just know the spells. They can cast them whenever they want to. But they have a smaller amount of spells that they know. They don't get to know as many as the wizard does. You also, as a sorcerer, can like supercharge your spells a few times a day to, maybe it's only supposed to be a single target spell. Now it's an AoE and you can hit multiple people. Things like that. Warlocks are very interesting. They're almost a religious class, but they're not really. Warlocks are a class that gets their magic from what's called a pact. So your pact could be, when you say pact, it's like demon. They get it from demons. That is a pact you can do. You can make a pact with a demon to get magic, and you get specific types of magic that way. Depending on what you make your pact with, I think can affect the types of spells and abilities you get as a warlock. I know a couple off the top of my head. You can make pacts with extraplanar creatures, which are like Cthulhu aliens, essentially. You can make a pact with like sentient weapons. You can make a pact with demons, and I think you can make a pact with like a fairy. And fairies in D&D are not like cutesy. They're like evil chaos creatures that will like straight up murder and steal children and things like that. Yeah, they're very cool. They're honestly very fun, and they're one of the most versatile spellcasting classes in the game, in that they can be fully focused on being melee, or they can totally be ranged and sling spells all day. So yeah, that's like the basic description I would say of each class. So what do we want to make our class, guys? What class should we go for? So we have Boblin. He's a goblin. He gets 2 dexterity and 1 constitution extra. But again, that doesn't have to necessarily determine what class we're going to pick. Swag is saying wizard. I like it. Okay. Has redeemed, in fact, 1,000 channel points to say wizard. Wizard is good, man. Wizard is a top tier choice, to be honest with you. Ranger. Okay. Honorable Macrotarian wants to go rogue. I probably am going to skip rogue because I always play a rogue and I would be able to very easily probably just like blast through it. Okay. We're going to do a wizard. Wizard's cool, guys. You'll like wizard. Trust. So, wizards primarily use intelligence and wisdom. Their hit die is very low. It's D6. So, of the types of dice, right, there's D4. And whenever somebody says D and then a number, that's how many sides the dice has. That's how many potential numbers you can go. So, a D4, it ranges from 1 to 4. A D6, it ranges from 1 to 6. A D8, 1 to 8, etc., all the way up to D20. So, D6. That means for our hit die, every level when we gain HP, we're not going to be gaining as much as, say, a barbarian whose hit die is like D12. But yeah, let's just add class. We're just going to pick it. We're going to pick it. Great. And now this is where we start getting into what kind of wizard do we want to play. Okay. We're going to make him level 3. And the reason why I'm picking level 3 is for a few reasons. Number one, a lot of DMs actually skip levels 1 and 2 and they go straight to 3. Because, and it's like, okay, why? That's like an arbitrary number. Why would they choose 3? Every class, by level 3, can pick their archetype, which lets them hone in on what type of wizard or what type of barbarian do they want to be. Up levels 1 and 2, you get the exact same stuff as every other wizard in the game, the exact same stuff as every other barbarian. Level 3, actually, for wizard, it's level 2, but level 3 for the archetype, that allows you now to choose, okay, I want to be an illusion wizard or whatever. But we're going to go one by one. And this is also why I like D&D Beyond, because it actually just it holds your hands through a lot of it. So, proficiencies. We get to choose 2 skills to be proficient in. Each class has an area of expertise that it will be able to choose its skills from. So, for instance, rogues, they get to choose from like sleight of hand and stealth and acrobatics, things like that are kind of more thieving and stuff, right? For wizards, it's all information based. None of it is strength, none of it is dexterity based. It's all based on information. And we can go through them in a very brief sense so that you guys get a good understanding of what each of those means. They're not proficient in any armor, which means they don't typically wear armor, which also means that their armor class, when they get hit, is going to be very low. So they're very easy to hit, typically. They have spells that can help them with this, but they're pretty easy to hit. They're only proficient in very basic weapons. You can see they're not proficient with swords. They're not proficient with, like, axes. So wizards are typically stay in the back kind of class. They don't really want to be up in the fray. Again, you can build your wizard to do a lot of different things. You can build a melee wizard. That does exist. But you have to really follow a very narrow path to get there. They're not proficient in any tools. They're proficient in intelligence and wisdom saving throws. So what's a saving throw? A saving throw is typically when something is happening to you you are going to make a saving throw to avoid it or resist it or reduce the damage that you take. The most basic example I can think of is a boulder is falling from the sky and it's going to hit you. You want to duck out of the way. You want to dodge out of the way. You would make a dexterity saving throw. It is testing your reaction speed and how dexterous you are to jump out of the way and not get crushed by that boulder. And you would roll a d20. You would add your dexterity modifier. And whatever the result of that is, you would tell your DM, and your DM would say either you duck out of the way, or maybe you don't completely clear it, you take some damage, or you completely fail, you're not able to move even an inch and you get crushed by the boulder. Whatever, right? So intelligence and wisdom saving throws are typically going to be to resist spells. Spells that affect your mind or, anything like that, typically you get a chance to resist them, and that's where intelligence and wisdom come in. Anyways, so skills. We get to choose from Arcana, History, Insight, Investigation, Medicine, and Religion. Religion's pretty self-explanatory. It's information on the religions of the world and basic information like, alignment. Are they evil? Are they good? What are their basic goals? What are their creeds? What are they like? Medicine, that is like basic stabilizing effects for your party. Let's say one of your party members goes unconscious, or you need to identify some herbs. Are these medicinal? Are they not? You can inspect like bodies. How was this person killed? Etc. Etc. What type of virus is this? Like things like that. Investigation, typically confused quite a bit with perception. Investigation, the way that I like to use it as well, is for searching and like discovering the uses of things. So let's say you're searching for like a lever. I would have you roll investigation. You're searching for traps. I would have you roll investigation. Your perception is like noticing unnoticed, like very minute details or things like that. Investigating is like searching out for something. It's kind of confusing, but that's basically the best way I can describe it. Insight is you would roll that usually like against bluff checks or motives for people to try to get a sense of, is this person lying to me? Are they telling me the truth? Are they telling me the whole truth? Things like that. Do they have any ulterior motives? History is also pretty self-explanatory. It's just the history of the land. What has happened in the past? That's it. And Arcana is magic-related items and potentially creatures. The way that magic works, or the effects of a spell that you see being cast in front of you, the way that this door is enchanted, etc., etc. So typically wizards, for me, what I like to go with is Arcana. Arcana is just always a solid choice because very few classes get to be proficient in Arcana. But what should we choose for our second skill, guys? What do you want to see? You want to do Insight? All right, let's do it. Sounds good. Spellcasting. This just says you can cast spells. It's really not that big of a deal. Arcane Recovery. Basically, this allows you to... So, the way a spellcaster casts spells is by expending what are called spell slots. As you level up, you get different levels of spells. So, that part of it is a little bit confusing. I'll go over it a little bit later on. But you basically have charges that you can expend to cast spells, but you have a maximum per day that you can do. But Arcane Recovery lets you restore a few of those charges when you rest for a little while. Okay, the big one is Arcane Tradition. Arcane Tradition severely changes the path of the wizard, right? There are 7 different schools of magic. And each of them are specific to like a type of spell, let's say. So I can go through them real quick and then let's pick one. I'm not going to do scribes or blade slinging or war magic because those are all in different books. Like I said, I'm just sticking to the Player's Handbook. So, the School of Transmutation is turning one thing into another thing. That can be yourself. That can be something you're touching. That can be like, I'm going to make my arm into a giant tentacle and hit you with it, things like that. Necromancy is fucking with the death and undead. You can animate corpses to do your bidding. You can steal life from other people, things like that. You can steal souls eventually if you really want to. That's the necromancy. Illusion, that also is probably pretty self-explanatory. Making things appear real, or making characters hear sounds or taste things or feel certain things that aren't actually there. So illusion, that is actually the type of magic that Nigel does. And I always thought was a very interesting choice because not a lot of people choose illusions. It's a bit less direct in value and requires you to think up a lot more, how am I going to use this to get out of the situation, or whatever it is. Steal soul is impossible. Soul does not exist. I forget what it is. It might not be steal soul. I thought there were soul shards in D&D though, and maybe I'm wrong. At least in 5e. Anyways, evocation. This is the go-to for a lot of people that make wizards. This basically gives you bonuses and benefits when you cast spells that do damage. So you can, you can, for instance, your area of effect spells, which, the most go-to one is Fireball, right? Nigel casts Fireball quite a lot. But he always has to be really careful because he's not in the school of evocation. He has to choose, where am I going to throw this so that I don't hurt my friends? Area of effect spells will hurt your friends. But if you're in the school of evocation, for example, eventually you can choose for specific people to not be affected by a gigantic explosion that you cause. So yeah, school of enchantment, that is making items or weapons that are imbuing them with magical properties, things like that. Divination, this is scrying the future or a faraway location or sending a message to someone that's far away. Kind of interesting, that one. Conjuration, that is creating things out of thin air. So you can create, for instance, a table or a chair, things like that. This also can eventually summon demons and things like that. They can conjure up demons or different types of magical creatures temporarily. They don't always have absolute control over them, so that's something to keep in mind as well. The last campaign that I played a conjuration wizard. They're very fun. They can be a really good time. And then the School of Abjuration, which is shielding. I'm pretty sure. Again, not a lot of people play Abjuration wizards, but it's more so creating shields and force fields and barriers and things like that. Does divination have synergy with insight? Sounds like you could know everything. So divination always has elements of failure, and it's up to your DM, for instance, when you're trying to scry the future or something like that, they have complete control over what they tell you. Usually the better you do on your roll, the more clear your information comes in, but it's usually muddled and difficult to read precisely what's going on. So which school would we like to be? What wizard school should we belong to? Should we be Slytherins? Gryffindor? What do you guys want to do? Also to note, just because you choose that school doesn't mean it locks you out of learning magic from the other schools. You just do not get maybe specific benefits for that magic. Again, for instance, Nigel is an illusion school, but he knows Fireball and shoots that out. Transmutation, abjuration, conjuration. We gotta narrow it down. I have never made a transmutation wizard. That could be kind of cool. I have made a conjuration one, and I'm not gonna lie, Broken Helix, I have no interest in playing an abjuration wizard. They're super boring, in my opinion. They're broken good if you do the right things, but I don't want to do it. So I'm gonna choose transmutation, Lexus. Good call. Ba-ba! Okay, so we have two benefits from being level 3 and from choosing the School of Transmutation. We get a transmutation. We are a transmutation savant. So beginning when you select the school at 2nd level, the gold and time you must spend to copy a transmutation spell into your spellbook is halved. So what this means, I kind of touched on this before, wizards can transfer scrolls into their spellbooks if they find them. That costs gold and that costs time. If you ever find transmutation scrolls, though, you can have both of those. So that's great. Minor alchemy. What is this? Let's read it. Starting at 2nd level, when you select this school, you can temporarily alter the physical properties of one non-magical object, changing it from one substance into another. You perform a special alchemical procedure on one object composed entirely of wood, stone, but not gemstone, iron, copper, or silver, transforming it into a different one of those materials. For each 10 minutes you spend performing the procedure, you can transform up to 1 cubic foot of material. After 1 hour, or until you lose your concentration, the material reverts to its original substance. Aha, so immediately, I can already think of some really excellent uses of this, right? You are put in prison, you're in jail, you're behind iron bars. You can spend time to make those bars out of wood, which maybe then you can destroy much easier. Or vice versa. You want to bar a door from being entered or make it harder for it to be destroyed. You can change it from being made out of wood into being made out of iron or something like that. Turn the bars into butter. Exactly. But yeah, lots of really cool things you could do with this for sure. Adds a lot of different really interesting utility elements, in my opinion. Before we get to pick our spells and things like that, we have to do our stats. So, there are a few ways that you can do stats in D&D. There is what's called point buy. There is standard array, which I think is just like you get like normal. Yeah, you get a. Okay, we'll start with standard array. Standard array, they just give you 6 stats that you can place wherever you want to. But once you use it, let's say 15 there, obviously I can't put it here. So you get the standard, like human, is a stat of 10 for everything. So 10 across the board is like an average human being in D&D. So 8 means you're slightly bad at that. And 15 would mean that you're excellent at it. Your maximum for a stat is 20. And your maximum that you can get or you can roll at the beginning of the game is 18. Okay? And I'll show you what I mean by roll. But basically, these just give you several stats that are above average, one stat that's below average, and then one stat that is right on par average. So if we were going to do, for instance, for our wizard here, I would probably choose Strength 8 because I never want him to be in melee combat anyway, so that's really not a big deal. I would do Intelligence 15. We want him to have the biggest brain possible because that's his most important stat. Whenever he casts spells, that's the stat modifier it's going to be looking at. And then I would probably do like Wisdom 14, maybe Constitution 13. Wisdom is also spell related. Wizards specifically use Intelligence, but Wisdom helps you with different skills as well as resisting some types of spells. Constitution affects your health. And maybe you're also like resistance to being poisoned, things like that. What I can do actually to just go over these stats real quick is tell you guys about the tomato test. Hey. But in order to understand what each of these stats mean, or what each of these stats basically relate to, think of them in relation to a tomato. So strength is how easily you can crush a tomato. Dexterity is how easily you can catch a tomato or throw a tomato at somebody. Constitution is how well you can stomach eating a rotten tomato. Intelligence would be knowing that a tomato is a fruit. Wisdom would be knowing that you shouldn't put tomato in a fruit salad. And charisma would be how well you could sell a tomato-based fruit salad to somebody. So there you go. All the stats explained pretty easily using our friend the tomato. So using that, we have that. We would go Charisma 12 and then Dexterity 10. This would be a super basic and pretty easy stat line for a wizard. There's also Point Buy, which is you get points, and it costs exceedingly more points to go up to 15, right? So they start each of your stats at 8, and you can use your 27 points to allocate those wherever you'd like to. So this way, you can determine, hey, I want to have 2 stats at 15. I want to have Intelligence and I want to have Charisma at 15. You can do that, but now you only have 9 points left, and you have to choose carefully where you're going to turn these other ones, because you're going to have some that are definitely below 10 at this point, or really low. So I could go 11 to these 3, which are not very good. So you'd have 2 really good stats, and then you'd have some really shitty ones, and then a really bad one. So this would be, you're really stacked on Intelligence and Charisma, and you're not really trying to get anywhere else. And then my favorite, which is also what I do, is I usually have my D&D campaigns roll for their stats. So DMs can do any of the 3 systems just fine. Rolling, I think, is the most fun. The reason why I think that is because it allows for some really either tough choices or some pretty powerful spikes as well. So I'm a pretty generous DM. What I will do is I will allow my players to roll 4d6, and they can write that down. So they'll roll 4d6, right? So I'm going to pretend, I'm going to roll one right now. And then what you do with the 4d6 is you remove the lowest rolled dice. So I rolled 3 5s and I rolled a 4. So I would take out the 4. I have 3 5s. That would be a 15, right? And I could put that, I would just have that written down like on the side here. So I'll just have that actually over here. So we'll roll the stats out. So we have a 15. We do this 6 times. We have 15. This one was pretty horrible. I rolled a 5. I rolled a 1, 1, a 2, and a 2. So that's awful. I rolled... Oops, I didn't roll the other one. Okay, this one was pretty good. I rolled another 15. I got a 4, a 5, a 6, and a 1. So taking the 1 out, that's 15. And 3 more to go. I rolled a 14 that time. 2 more. Boom, boom, boom. Oh, this one's pretty horrible again. I got a 10. Actually, that's not that bad. And the last one. Woof, this one is actually also awful. So I got a 9. So you can see that we have 3 stats that are a little above average, which if we compare this to to the standard array, let's look at what we have for the standard array and then also what we get on our note. Okay, so we get 8, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15. Mine, I have 15, 15, 14, 10, 9, 5. So you can see I got 3 pretty decent rolls, 15s and 14s, and then 3 really not good and 1 horribly bad one. And DMs can do this however they want to. Some DMs will only let you roll 3d6 and you have to use whatever you roll. Some DMs will let you re-roll 1s on your first roll. So let's say I roll 46 and I got 2 1s. They would let me re-roll that, but then if I rolled a 1 again, you have to keep it. It just depends on what kind of campaign they want to run. But we'll just use this. So let's go ahead. So I will put a 15 in Intelligence. I will put a 15 in Wisdom. And I'll put my 14 in Constitution. So that would mean I have to put I'll put my 10 in Charisma. He's not very charismatic, but he's not charismatic. I'll put a 9 for Dexterity. And I'll put a 5 for Strength. Yeah. Okay, sure. Why not? Again, the 5 is horrible. This is severely below just average human strength. But you can see that my 9 in Dexterity went up to 11 because it also takes into account my racial bonus for being a goblin. They get +2 Dexterity. They also get +1 Constitution. So 3 15s, not bad. A 10, an 11, and a 5. At the end of the day, not the worst stats in the game. I just really do not want to have to take any strength checks or anything like that. So we know what kind of character we have. Fantastic. So those are the stats. Now, this description, we're not probably really going to do anything here, but this is one of the most underrated parts of character creation, in my opinion, and should be thought about quite a bit. So, as a DM, I really like it when my players are invested and create a backstory for their character. Whether that's they have a faith or a specific like lifestyle that they can pick. D&D 5th edition gives you benefits or negatives for choosing these, in that your lifestyle can give you more gold to start with, but also you have like maybe enemies and things like that in the game. You also can pick like traits and flaws and ideals, and beyond that, you can pick your physical characteristics, like what's your eye color, what's your skin color, how much do you weigh, how tall are you, how old is your character, etc. All of these are really important, but what I want to really focus on for character development is personal characteristics. So this, in conjunction with your backstory or your background, I think are really important. And this is where your quirks of your character are. This is where you can flesh out what kind of goblin is Boblin. Why is he a wizard? Think about those things. Why is this goblin a wizard? Where did he learn to be a wizard, right? What were the steps he had to take? Maybe he was an orphan found by, a wizard library, and they took pity on him and let him sweep the library and organize the shelves so that he could stay out of the cold. But on the side, he started reading and learning them on his own and grew through the ranks and blah, blah, blah. Right? Like, that's just a very basic kind of idea. But those kind of things can really help you flesh out and give your DM tools to involve your character more in the world and like make them feel more like settled where they are, instead of like, my character had his parents killed and now he seeks vengeance. That is probably the most basic and used like character backstory in the entire world, because seemingly, and it's not necessarily a bad one, that's the issue, but everybody does that when they're like, I'm like a mercenary, I travel around, my parents were killed when I was young, so I learned how to fight with a sword and now I'm a fighter. Like, that's I'm Batman, exactly. So I usually try to, if characters come to me with those types of things, I try to tweak it a little bit. Hey, let's make it more interesting. Maybe it was a specific criminal organization that killed them, right? That would give you some enemies. That means that maybe later on you encounter those enemies again, and you have character development and story development that drives that. Maybe you were saved by your neighbors or by a traveling, I don't know, circus or something, right? Like, I don't know. And now those are like an ally organization that you can call on later in the game, or maybe you have connections with them and you get certain benefits for that sort of stuff. So taking very simple ideas like that and then fleshing it out so that you not only give your character negatives but also potentially positives makes the DM's job a lot easier and makes your character a lot more interesting. I have played in campaigns, and I really like this, where the DM forced everybody to choose 3 flaws for their characters. Whether that's an enemy, whether that's like a fear, whether that's like a physical issue that they have, something like that. But they had to pick 3 flaws and tell the DM what they were, because he called them basically, he wanted to have knives to stab the characters with. So if your character has like no backstory, nothing interesting about them, there's no built-in way, unless the DM literally creates it as the story's going on, where they can have things from your past come up in the game. And those elements and those types of things are really cool. A really great example of that, for instance, is Call, right? In our D&D campaign. Call is a Kenku. His village was attacked by a like band of warlocks that he doesn't know much about, but in order to defend them, he drank this forbidden potion, which gave him the demon soul possession that turned him into a barbarian, essentially. That's how he wanted to do it, and I really liked that. I thought that was awesome. So, that being said, he saved his village, but because he drank this forbidden potion, he was exiled from the village. And they have a very special type of exile that we sort of fleshed out later on, where they actually erase him from memory. And they can't see or interact with him. So Call later on in the story had to travel with a Kenku on a ship. And that Kenku couldn't see him, couldn't hear him, and couldn't interact with him. And that sort of grew his character more. It was a very sort of important moment for his character to come to terms and understand what was going on. Yeah. So when you're making a character, guys, do not shirk on this stuff. In fact, spend as much time as you can doing it, because I think a really thought out and well managed character, DMs will be able to interact with and will love you for it, because they will be able to give you some really awesome ideas and story development parts. They do have pre-written backgrounds. These are not backstories. These are backgrounds. So that means, what walk of life do you come from? Are you a noble? Are you noble born? Are you rich? Do you come from a family like that? Are you a pirate? Do you literally go around with a band of thieves stealing from people or sailing? And you get different, again, benefits and negatives. Let's say you're a criminal or a spy. You get to be proficient in the thieves' tools. You get 2 extra skill proficiencies you wouldn't normally get. You also get other special abilities like criminal contact, where you have connections to the criminal underworld, and you are able to send messages to them so that they can try and help you collect and find information. They also give you suggested characteristics, where if you're having a hard time determining what you want your character to be, you can pick some from personality traits and from flaws and ideals and bonds. So why don't we just do that? Why don't we actually do that for our character? What background should Boblin the Goblin Wizard be? There's Acolyte, Charlatan, Criminal Spy, Entertainer, Folk Hero, Gladiator, Guild Artisan / Merchant, Haunted One, Hermit, Knight, Noble, Outlander, Pirate, Sage, Sailor, Soldier, Urchin. What do you guys want to do? Merchant? Let's do it. Let's do it. So we get proficient in persuasion. So artisan / merchant, you are a member of an artisan's guild, skilled in a particular field and closely associated with other artisans. You are a well-established part of the mercantile world, freed by talent and wealth from the constraints of a feudal social order. You learned your skills as an apprentice to a master artisan under the sponsorship of your guild, until you became a master in your own right. Okay, and that kind of gets you started for learning and developing your backstory. Why would our goblin wizard also be a merchant? That's great. Think of those reasons. But we get persuasion. We also get another skill from this. I would say we already have arcana and we already have insight. So maybe what would make sense here? Maybe deception. Deception would be kind of a cool one, so that he can have an easier time, swindling other people or knowing when he is being swindled himself. He also gets to be proficient with tools. Okay, so this could be what type of thing does he sell? And we could go, well, he sells calligraphy supplies. So he's a map maker. He makes scrolls. Maybe he's a merchant that sells his own magic as scrolls to other people. And that's how he makes his money, and that's how he continues his training to be a wizard. Things like that. Hey, look, that's pretty cool. I like that idea. You also get to pick another language, being a merchant. And this usually doesn't matter. It is a lot of people will meme around and they'll be like, I will pick Abyssal, which is demons of the ocean. And it's okay, that will literally never come up. So you could try to just pick a regular-ish one, I'll pick Elvish. Or I'll pick Orc, because I'm a goblin and my cousins are orcs, and so I know how to talk to them. Things like that. He was a poor fellow and had to perform dances to get rich by goblin dancing. Oh boy. You also get this benefit, guild membership. As an established and respected member of a guild, you can rely on certain benefits that membership provides. Your fellow guild members will provide you with lodging and food if necessary, and pay for your funeral if needed. Okay, so that's pretty great. If you're in like a well-known city where your guild exists, you can get free lodging and food. And if you die, they'll even pay for your funeral. What's up, Flair? Yeah, we're building a character, man. In some cities and towns, a guild hall offers a central place to meet other members of your profession, which would be a good place to meet potential patrons, allies, or hirelings. Guilds often wield tremendous political power. If you are accused of a crime, your guild will support you if a good case can be made and your innocence or the crime is justifiable. You can also gain access to powerful political figures through the guild if you're a member in good standing. Such connections might be required the donation of money or magic items to the guild's coffers. So you like have this mega corporation where you like have a whole lot of sway and they'll help you. But you have to pay dues of 5 gold a month through the guild. If you miss payments, you must make up back dues to remain in the guild's good graces. So this is one of the few paths where you actually have to pay in order to continue to be a part of it, but you can see there's some really big benefits. Great, and we're going to pick characteristics. Again, you can totally just do these, whichever ones you want, but or create your own. But let's just, because of the sake of time, I'm going to random them. So, personality traits. Choose 2. I believe any... Okay, so that was... So here, we'll just do them, and then we'll read them later. So 2, we'll do 1, we'll do one of these, and we'll do one of these. And let's see what we get. Fantastic. I believe that anything worth doing is worth doing right. I can't help it. I'm a perfectionist. I like to talk at length about my profession. So those are our 2 personality traits. They are obsessed with the minute details and making sure that everything is perfect. And maybe we can do that and spin that into the quality of the scrolls that they make are a little bit extra, cause for an extra higher price because they spend so long, laboring over the exact details to make sure that the scrolls are as perfect as possible that he makes. And he likes to talk at length about his profession. Maybe he just talks people's ears off and regardless if they're listening or not, he's more than happy to just talk out loud. Ideals. Freedom. Everyone should be free to pursue his or her own livelihood. Chaotic. Okay. So this one kind of makes sense more so with goblins in that a merchant is not normally how goblins would make their living, but that is the way that they've chosen to do that. And so that sort of resounds with their ideal here. Bonds. I will get revenge on the evil forces that destroyed my place of business and ruined my livelihood. Okay, so here is a really fantastic story element that the DM could work with. Some evil force destroyed your place of business and ruined your livelihood, and now maybe you have to travel around in a cart and wagon selling your scrolls out of the back because the town that you are in was destroyed or something like that. Flaws. I'll do anything to get my hands on something rare or priceless. Okay, so you have some issues, again, with being perfectionist. You don't settle for subpar quality ingredients for your scrolls that you make. And so sometimes you will do things that aren't entirely legal in order to obtain the necessary materials you need. Something like that, right? These are just super basic things that you can try to spin into a character, and you can use those as the launching points. Edit your personality traits or your flaws, or, oh, you know what, that gave me this really great idea. Let me go this route instead. You just really want to run with it. Don't let things hold you back. Fantastic. And as a character in D&D, you get starting equipment. So, typically, each class, you have selections of choices you can make to start out with what kind of weapon do you want? What kind of other materials do you want as well? And you can make choices between them, or you can just choose to get gold and you can buy your own equipment that you want. For the sake of time, let's go with equipment. So we can get a quarterstaff or a dagger. What should we get, team? Are we a staff wielder or are we shanking people with a dagger if we have to? I think I like quarterstaff as well. It's the classic. The bonk stick. Let's go. The second thing we could choose. Do we have a component pouch or an arcane focus? So this is specifically how wizards cast spells. They either have like an orb or maybe a crystal at the end of their staff that they channel the magic through, or they can use a component pouch, because each spell actually has material components that you should use or you can use in order to cast it, like a feather from an owl, a diamond that's worth 10 gold or something like that. And you basically just grab those things and you go, haha, spell. So you can either have a component pouch, which has a bunch of those basic components, or an arcane focus. The arcane focus lets you negate the need for a lot of those components. So a lot of the people go for usually arcane focus. I think it fits pretty well with quarterstaff, because again, you can do like a gem or a diamond at the end of it that you channel it through. The globe at the end of his staff is a fishbowl where you keep your seahorse familiar. Everyone knows that. Oh my god. Arcane focus. I don't have fishbowl, but I'll do orb so that I can have my fishbowl familiar. Okay, we either get a scholar's pack or an explorer's pack. So a scholar's pack, it's like a pre-packaged kit for a scholar or an explorer. The explorer's pack comes with like rations, bedrolls, food, like tinder, torches, rope, stuff like that. A scholar's pack has like ink and papers and letters and stuff like that. So usually you would choose one of these, either depending on what your character would have, or depending on where your campaign is going to take place. So if your campaign is going to almost entirely take place in the city, the Scholar's Pack could be good. Oh, here, it tells you. Backpack, a book of lore, a bottle of ink, an ink pen, 10 sheets of parchment, a little bag of sand, and a small knife.
Oh, there's Twitch channel. Twitch
nice.
channel.
Or...
Oh, man. Hey, Jerry, say that 10 times fast.
Yo, thank you for the follow. Explorer's Pack, which has a backpack, a bedroll, a mess kit, tinderbox, 10 torches, 10 days of rations, and a water skin. The pack also has 50 feet of hempen rope strapped to the side of it. So I think our wizard merchant is going to use an explorer's pack because they travel from town to town since their place of business was destroyed. So since they sell scrolls out of their wagon or their cart, they have an explorer's pack and have to live on the land a bit. And you also get some other starting equipment from your background. So we get a set of artisan tools. We are proficient with calligraphy tools, so it'd probably be smart to take calligraphy supplies. You also get a letter of introduction from your guild. So this could be like, hey, it is a letter that says you're in the guild and you're in good standing with the guild. So that when you go to a town, you can show that to your guild hall if there is one, and they go, oh, okay, yeah, come on in. A set of traveler's clothes and a pouch containing 15 gold. Bam, let's add it. Now we have all that awesome equipment. We're ready to go exploring. So, there is one last thing we need to do. And it is one of the most crucial things for our character. So this is our character sheet. This is Boblin, the Goblin Wizard. He's level 3. He has 18 total hit points at maximum. And he has a -3 modifier to strength, which is awful. But we have not picked spells. So we need to pick spells. Spells are, for wizards, slightly complicated. So let me pull up the game rules. If ever you're not sure, you can always go, hey, game rules, wizards, what the heck? How do I do this? So, as a wizard, you have, again, spell slots, which is, you can see in this graph here. But we can also see on our character sheet. So we can cast, every day, we can cast 4 level 1 spells, and we can cast 2 level 2 spells. And we also know what are called cantrips. Cantrips are spells that you can cast as many times a day as you want. They're more basic spells that don't require you to ready them or prepare them. You just always know them. And so they're always your backup. Okay? However, you might know more spells than you can cast in a day, or less spells than you can cast in a day. So your spell slots and how many spells you know are not the same thing. You could cast the same level 1 spell 4 times if you wanted to, or you could cast 4 different level 1 spells. Just depends on what you would like to do for the day and what you want to do. So we have to learn, okay, how many spells do we know, right? Let's figure that out. So at first level, so this is our spell books, right? At first level, you have a spell book containing 6 first level spells of your choice. Your spell book is the repository for your wizard spells, for the wizard spells that you know, except your cantrips, which are fixed in your mind. So cantrips do not take up space in your spell book. Okay, so we have that already. So 6 level, first level spells. Let's write that down. Okay, 6 first level spells. Easy.
Oh, there's Twitch
Now,
channel. Twitch channel.
As we level up,
hey,
we get to
Jerry,
learn more
fast.
first level, we get to learn more spells. Thanks for the follow. Let's read this part. Wizard table shows how many spell sets you have to cast your wizard spells of first level and higher. To cast one of these spells, you must expend a slot of the spell's level or higher. So if you want to cast another level 1 spell, but you're out of level 1 spell slots, you can actually use a level 2 slot if you want to. You prepare a list of wizard spells that are available for you to cast. So, this is where it gets a little complicated for wizards. They have a book. It's full of spells. They can choose every day to prepare X amount of those spells. So, just because you know the spell as a wizard doesn't mean you can cast it. You have to, at the beginning of the day, prepare it. It's not a very great system. Wizard is the most complicated spellcasting class in the game. But basically, you prepare a list of wizard spells to cast. To do so, you choose a number of wizard spells from your spellbook equal to your intelligence modifier plus your wizard level. Okay? So what that means is at level 3, we can prepare 5 spells. So that means we can have, on any given day, not including cantrips, we can have 5 of our spells ready to go to cast. Okay? But how many spells do I heckin' know? Let's find out. So, we have our level 1 numbers ready. We get 6 first level spells, okay? That's just being level 1. Each time you gain a wizard level, so each time you level up and you're a wizard, you can add 2 wizard spells of your choice to your spellbook for free. Each of these spells must be of a level for which you have spell slots as shown in the table. So, what does this mean? Let's go through each level. Level 1, we know 6 first level. Okay, that's just is to start you off. Level 2, we can learn 2 more level 1 spells, or we can learn 2 more cantrips, or we can learn 1 and 1. Okay, level 3, we get access to second level spells, where we can now learn either 2 level 2 spells, 2 level 1 spells, 2 more cantrips, or any combination of that. So, in general, and this is where it gets a little confusing, right? We know 8 first level spells. We'll know 3 cantrips at the end of this. And just to make it easy, we're going to learn 2 level 2 spells. Okay. Easy money, right? Everybody is completely on the same page. Don't worry if you don't get it. It is a complicated kind of system. But let's carry on. Let's crack on. Where is... I would like for this to be over... Okay, perfect. Over here. Over here with chat. So, we need to pick 8 first level spells. And we just click learn and it adds it to our spellbook. We are a transmutation wizard, but that doesn't necessarily mean we have to learn specifically only transmutation spells. So let's look through any spells that jump out that you guys want to take a look at. I'm not going to go through every single one. Mage Hand. There is no such thing. Not that I can get. We have Mage Armor. The more you play, the less sense it makes, but you understand it. That's true. I think it's a cantrip. Alright, we can go our cantrips here. Cantrips, Mage Hand. What does this one do? A special floating hand appears at a point you choose within range. The hand lasts for the duration or until you dismiss it with an action. You can use your action to control the hand. You can use the hand to manipulate an object. Open an unlocked door or container. Stow or retrieve an item from an open container, or pour the contents out of a vial. So basically, we have an invisible hand that you can use to open stuff and pour things out. Sure, let's learn Mage Hand. That's fine. So that's one of our cantrips learned. Let's go with a very basic cantrip. Firebolt. Firebolt, it's always good to have a cantrip that does damage so that if you run out of spell slots for your day, you can still do some damage here. So Firebolt, it shoots a bolt of fire. It does 1d10. It will catch somebody on fire if it isn't being worn or carried. Perfect. Let's learn Firebolt. Mage Hand is great for solving puzzles that you don't need Mage Hand for. That's true. And so we have one damaging cantrip. We have one kind of utility cantrip. Maybe we can get something utility as well. Again, what is Lightning Lure? I don't know. You create a lash of lightning energy that strikes at one creature of your choice that you can see within 15 feet of you. The target must succeed on a strength saving throw or be pulled up to 10 feet in a straight line toward you. Then take 1d8 damage if it is within 5 feet of you. Wow, so it's like a lightning lasso. Basically, you lasso the enemy, you pull them towards you 10 feet, 15 feet, or no, sorry, 10 feet, and then if they're within 5 feet of you, they take 1d8 damage. Interesting. What's cool to note is you could do this to your friends. It just says one creature. It doesn't say enemy. So you could do that to your friends if you want to. I like it. Let's do Lightning Lure. Nice. Nice. Good call, Broken Helix. Now, we have 8 level 1 spells, so we don't have to be overly picky about these. Well, fantastic, guys. We picked all of our spells. We've picked them all. Well played. We've learned them. Look at us. Should... Okay, wait, hold on. Do I have to hit add at the end or something? No, I already added them. Huh. I don't know why it's not showing up on our spell list, but we did learn them. That's okay. No big deal. But I think our transmutation wizard is off to the races. I hope, guys, if you're hanging out, this was helpful for you. If you're new to D&D, or you maybe wanted a different perspective on how somebody else thinks about when they roll their character. But this was super fun. I enjoyed this. If you like this sort of thing and would like to see more type of D&D content on this channel, definitely let me know. If you have any suggestions or something you would like to see or explain, or you'd like to know my thinking or my thought process on it, hit me up. Let me know. I would be more than happy to provide some different type of content.